Nebraska's most notorious women killers, full list and shocking details. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Carrie Jones. She didn't act impulsively. Carrie Jones quietly endured days of tension in the small town of Laurel, Nebraska. Behind her calm exterior, messages were sent, plans were made. On August 4, 2022, everything would change forever. Carrie Jones, 42 at the time, was married to Jason Jones, the man who would ultimately commit a grisly quadruple murder on August 4, 2022. Their victims were Jean Twyford, 86, an elderly neighbor whom Carrie accused of harassing her through inappropriate public comments, Jean's wife Janet, 85, their daughter Dana, 55, and Michelle Ebeling, 53, another neighbor. Prosecutors painted a disturbing portrait of premeditation, arguing that Carrie not only endured the alleged harassment but actively encouraged Jason to carry out Twyford's murder. Evidence presented during the trial revealed that Carrie pulled the strings behind the scenes, coordinating with Jason via text messages that detailed the plan and motives. Jason himself testified he was fed up with living and sought to cause some problems for other people and people that were bothering us, describing a disturbing mindset that turned rage into deadly action. The brutality of the crime shocked the community. Jason Jones entered each victim's home, fatally shooting all four before setting the properties ablaze, an act which also caused severe burns to himself. This cold and calculated destruction left no doubt about the premeditated nature of the murders. Investigators' examinations of Carrie and Jason's phones uncovered communications that implicated Carrie's role prior to the shooting, bolstering the prosecution's case. The charge of first-degree murder required proof that Carrie acted purposely and with deliberate and premeditated malice, a burden the jury ultimately found met. Carrie Jones was arrested on December 16, 2022. Her trial commenced in Madison County, Nebraska, nearly 3 years later, on July 28, 2025. Prosecuted by the Nebraska Attorney General's office, she faced charges including first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and being an accessory to a felony. Despite her defense team's argument that Jason acted independently and her own husband's testimony denying her involvement, the jury returned a guilty verdict on August 7, 2025, after approximately 3.5 hours of deliberation. While Jason faced the death penalty, Carrie's conviction led to a mandatory life sentence without parole, as prosecutors noted the absence of aggravating circumstances in her case. In the courtroom, Carrie appeared composed yet resigned, now 46 years old, confronted by the weight of her actions and their consequences. The trial venue had been changed from Cedar County to Madison County due to pretrial publicity and strong local sentiments against the Joneses, ensuring a fair trial. The victims' families expressed a complex mixture of relief and sorrow, thanking law enforcement and the legal team for their dedication. One family member remarked on the enduring pain, emphasizing their focus on healing and honoring our mother, grandma, father, grandpa, and sister, carrying their love and memories with us every day. The case of Carrie Jones offers important lessons for viewers. First, personal disputes and harassment must be resolved through lawful channels. Violence only deepens tragedy. Second, the presence of evidence indicating planning and encouragement of violence demands vigilant investigation and intervention. Third, communities should foster supportive networks that can identify signs of escalating conflict before they turn deadly. Understanding these warnings is critical to preventing similar devastation elsewhere. Justice in Carrie Jones's case affirms the principle that accountability transcends circumstance, balancing fairness with the demand for responsibility. The lives lost in Laurel call us to confront the painful realities behind violent crimes and to commit ourselves to a society that values peace over vengeance. Violence destroys more than bodies. It shatters communities and leaves questions that only justice can begin to answer. Number 2. Bailey Boswell. Bailey Boswell didn't act on impulse. Behind a quiet facade in Nebraska, a sinister plan was unfolding. In 2017, a 23-year-old woman lured Sydney Loof, a 24-year-old cashier, into a deadly trap disguised as a date. What seemed like a chance meeting on Tinder would soon reveal a chilling tale of murder and deception. Bailey Boswell was more than just Sydney's date. She was the girlfriend and accomplice of Aubrey Trail, the man who strangled Sydney to death with an extension cord inside an apartment. After the murder, Sydney's body was dismembered into 14 pieces and scattered in garbage bags along rural Nebraska roads. The brutality stunned investigators and rocked the local community. Prosecutors revealed that Boswell and Trail had been planning a killing well before Sydney appeared. Testimonies from witnesses painted a disturbing picture. The couple was obsessed with dark rituals, group sex, and torturous acts. Bailey reportedly helped select Sydney as the victim, fueling the twisted plan with sex and witchcraft motivations. Trail admitted Sydney freaked out when confronted with their criminal lifestyle, which included defrauding antique dealers and engaging in violent sexual behavior, prompting him to murder her. During the investigation, authorities uncovered graphic evidence, over 50 photos of Sydney's dismembered body, including her severed head and missing internal organs. These images were used in court to prove the premeditated and malicious nature of the crime. Forensic analysis linked the couple to tools purchased for dismemberment, while communications on their phones showed coordination and planning. Boswell was arrested and tried in Nebraska. Her defense argued she was forced into participation by Trail and that prior discussions about torture were irrelevant to the case. Trail himself attempted to exonerate Boswell, claiming she wasn't present during the killing and didn't know his intentions. Yet, despite these defenses, a jury found Boswell guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human remains in October 2020. Sentencing came in November 2021 before a 3-judge panel. Nebraska law required a unanimous decision to impose the death penalty, but the judges were split. 2 favored capital punishment, citing Boswell's role in luring Sydney, buying power tools, and her alleged sexual arousal by thoughts of torture. 1 judge dissented, doubting the evidence met the threshold of exceptional depravity. As a result, Boswell received life imprisonment without parole, plus additional sentences totaling 52 years. Boswell appealed, challenging the admission of graphic photos and testimony about occult practices and sexual fantasies, claiming they prejudiced the jury. On May 10, 2024, the Nebraska Supreme Court upheld her conviction and sentence, ruling the evidence was relevant to proving motive and intent. Boswell remains incarcerated at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women. The sentencing hearing was emotional. Sydney Luff's family was present as the judge described Sydney as a helpless victim. Nebraska Attorney General Doug Peterson expressed sympathy for the family and gratitude toward law enforcement and the jury for their work. The case drew widespread media attention, prompting a venue change due to local hostility and ensuring a fair trial. While the story circulated on social media, no large-scale protests followed. This tragedy offers critical lessons. First, exercise extreme caution with online dating, trust must be earned, and safety prioritized. Second, beware of hidden dangers, violent intentions may lurk beneath seemingly normal interactions. Third, communities and authorities must stay alert to signs of predatory behavior and intervene before tragedy strikes. Bailey Boswell's case is a grim testament to how cold, premeditated violence intertwines with manipulation and dark motives, resulting in irreversible loss. Justice, though imperfect, held her accountable under Nebraska's laws. Violence fractures not only bodies but trust, safety, and humanity itself. Only through justice and collective responsibility can society heal and shield its most vulnerable members. Number 3. Shelley Casterline. Shelley Lynn Casterline's life seemed ordinary in the quiet town of Guide Rock, Nebraska, until a night in October 2013 transformed everything. What started as a heated argument inside a family home ended in a brutal murder that shook the community to its core. On October 4, 2013, Shelley, then 40 years old, was involved in a volatile relationship with Ronald Jamilowski. That night, an argument between Shelley and Ronald's mother, 68-year-old Virginia Barone, escalated dramatically. Shelley later claimed Virginia struck her, igniting a violent rage. In response, Shelley grabbed a knife and stabbed Virginia 22 times, twice in the back and 20 times across her chest and torso. The ferocity of the attack was staggering. Virginia's body was found partially covered by boards in her home, a chilling sign of the brutality she suffered. The crime immediately triggered an intense investigation. Later that evening, Shelley's son Andrew was arrested for driving under the influence of drugs in Virginia's car on Interstate 80. The next day, Shelley posted bond for Andrew, but their actions grew more desperate. They allegedly stole a Jeep and were arrested in Newton, Iowa, accused of mugging a woman at a Walmart parking lot. Police found Virginia's bank cards in their possession, deepening suspicions of their involvement in multiple crimes. By October 25, 2013, Shelley and Andrew faced serious charges: first-degree murder, use of a deadly weapon, burglary, and theft. In March 2014, Shelley accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree murder, aiming to avoid the harsher first-degree charges. During Andrew's trial later that year, Shelley testified that he wasn't involved in the stabbing but only helped move the body. Prosecutors played audio recordings of Shelley's interviews that contradicted her testimony, indicating Andrew's deeper involvement. The jury convicted Andrew of first-degree murder, use of a deadly weapon, and burglary. Sentences were grim. Judge Stephen Illingworth described the brutality of the attack and the high number of wounds inflicted on Virginia. He noted that evidence suggested Shelley knew Virginia was still alive after the stabbing but left her to die. Despite Shelley's plea deal, the judge sentenced her to life in prison, declaring his intent for her to spend the rest of her life behind bars. Shelley expressed remorse, saying, "Not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did. I'm very sorry. I took away a grandmother and a mother." The community response was sober but resolute. Webster County Attorney Sarah Boxstetter said, "It's not a celebration, but it's justice for the victim, Virginia Barone." While the case did not ignite protests or massive media attention, it left a lasting impact on Guide Rock, serving as a painful reminder of how domestic conflicts can turn deadly. This tragic case offers essential lessons for all. First, family disputes must be addressed early through peaceful means. Ignoring warning signs can have deadly consequences. Second, moments of rage can lead to irreversible actions. Seeking help before violence erupts is critical. Third, substance abuse and emotional instability, as seen with Andrew's DUI and anxiety issues, often exacerbate dangerous situations and require proactive intervention. Shelley Casterline's story underscores how a single moment of fury can fracture families and devastate communities. Justice, while served, cannot undo the pain left behind. The brutal murder of Virginia Barone reveals how violence reaches beyond physical wounds to break trust and safety. Virginia Barone's life ended in violence, but her story challenges us to choose empathy over anger, prevention over regret, and justice as the foundation for peace. Number 4. Monique C. Lee. Monique Lee's quiet life in Nebraska unraveled in October 2010, when a brutal murder shattered a community and exposed dark family secrets. At 28, Monique was the tenant of Karen Jenkins, her landlord, a 48-year-old woman whose life ended violently under circumstances that gripped the public's attention. The murder came just 2 days after Monique received eviction papers from Karen Jenkins. Prosecutors revealed a carefully planned trap. Monique and her brother Gary lured Karen to an apartment under the pretense that Gary wanted to rent the place. Once inside, Monique strangled Karen with a vacuum cleaner cord while Gary restrained her legs. Adding to the horror, the siblings glued Karen's nose and mouth shut, ensuring her silence during the suffocating attack. The cause of death was strangulation, asphyxiation, and a fractured throat bone. Following the murder, the body was moved repeatedly before being abandoned beneath the porch of a vacant house, where it was discovered 5 days after Karen's disappearance. The sheer brutality and chilling method shocked both law enforcement and the local community. The premeditation was clear, luring a victim under false pretenses, the cruel act of gluing her airways shut, and the attempt to conceal the crime through moving the body. Investigations led to the arrest of Monique and Gary Lee, who faced charges including first-degree murder and use of a weapon to commit a felony. Monique's first trial ended in a mistrial. Gary initially cooperated, pleading guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for testifying against Monique. However, during Monique's second trial, Gary recanted, claiming sole responsibility for the murder, resulting in his removal from the witness stand and a perjury charge. Despite these complications, the jury convicted Monique Lee of first-degree murder and felony weapon use. Her defense had argued insanity, but the jury rejected this plea, emphasizing the deliberate and calculated nature of the crime. Sentencing followed in November 2012, when Monique, then 29, received life imprisonment without parole. The judge highlighted the brutality of the attack, the numerous wounds, and evidence suggesting Monique was aware Karen was still alive after the initial attack but left her to die. Prosecutors had anticipated this life sentence, seeing it as fitting for such a merciless crime. Emotions ran high in the courtroom. Cecilia Mitchell, a friend of the victim for over 30 years, expressed deep sorrow and anger, saying she had no mercy for the Lee siblings and wished they had faced the death penalty. Even their mother, Patricia Wilson, showed sympathy to the Jenkins family, remarking she understood their grief as if losing 2 kids herself. Monique Lee's life sentence, however, was short-lived. Just over 2 months later, she died unexpectedly in the Nebraska Women's Prison in York. Complaining of feeling unwell, she collapsed and was pronounced dead at York General Hospital. The cause of death remains unclear, closing her chapter but leaving many questions unanswered. This harrowing case offers essential warnings. First, disputes over housing and eviction can escalate dangerously, demanding early, peaceful conflict resolution. Second, premeditated violence often involves deception and cruelty, underscoring the importance of vigilance and swift intervention by authorities. Third, the complexities of family dynamics can hinder justice, highlighting the need for thorough and impartial investigations. Karen Jenkins' tragic death forces us to reflect on the fragility of life and the urgent need for justice systems that can protect the vulnerable. Though justice was served, the case of Monique Lee reveals how dark motives and cold calculation can shatter lives and leave lasting scars on families and communities alike. In remembering Karen Jenkins, we are called to prioritize empathy over anger, prevention over regret, and unwavering commitment to justice as the foundation of peace. Number 5. Taiana Matheny. Taiana Matheny arrived in Omaha, Nebraska, at just 21 years old, stepping into a dangerous world she barely understood. Within days, her actions would leave 2 men dead and a community shaken by a ruthless crime spree rooted in manipulation and cold violence. On February 23, 2005, 2 strangers, Kevin Pierce Sr., 26, and Victor Ford, 25, both met Matheny under innocent pretenses. There was no prior connection. She would flirt, exchange numbers, and lure them to isolated apartment complexes. Waiting inside were her boyfriend, Terry Sellers, and his friend, Terrell Thorpe, ready to rob and kill. Kevin Pierce was shot execution style in the head. Matheny admitted to pressing the gun to his temple and pulling the trigger. The cold calculation shocked the court and community alike. Victor Ford met a similar fate shortly after. Just days later, on February 27th, Matheny and Sellers attempted to murder a third man, Dwayne Kearney, during what was supposed to be a drug deal. Kearney fought back, surviving a gunshot and stabbing, leading to the arrest of Matheny and Sellers. This event connected them to the earlier murders, exposing the full extent of their violent plan. Matheny faced 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Her defense claimed she was a victim of coercion, stating Sellers forced her to shoot Pierce, describing herself as a classic case of falling in with the wrong crowd. She said she did what people wanted me to, whether I wanted to or not, never questioning her actions. Despite this, the premeditated nature was clear, luring victims, facilitating robberies, and orchestrating executions. In December 2007, Matheny pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder in a deal that dropped first-degree murder charges and other counts. Her testimony was pivotal in securing first-degree murder convictions against Sellers and Thorpe. The trial tested her credibility, as the defense aggressively challenged her statements, but prosecutors emphasized her crucial role in revealing the plot. In March 2009, the judge sentenced Matheny to 35 to 70 years for murder, plus 5 to 10 years for each conspiracy count, totaling up to 80 years in prison. Officials recognized her cooperation but held her accountable for her role in the cold, calculating, brutal killings. At sentencing, her fate was clear. She told the court she was almost positive I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. The victims' families expressed deep pain and mixed emotions. A cousin of Victor Ford shared, "We just heard right now /. We're glad justice is being done." Erica Wilson, friend of Kevin Pierce and mother of his daughter, was unimpressed with Matheny's testimony despite her admission to murder. Sellers' father doubted her claims of coercion, saying, "You can't force nobody to do nothing." While the case gripped local media, it did not spur broad social media activism or protests. Instead, it stands as a grim reminder of how charm and manipulation can hide cold-blooded crime. This case offers vital warnings. First, appearances can deceive. Beware when charm masks dangerous intentions. Second, coercion may drive people to commit unthinkable acts. Recognizing and resisting manipulation can be life-saving. Third, Premeditated violence thrives on careful planning. Vigilance from communities and law enforcement is crucial to prevention. Taiana Matheny's crimes reveal the devastating impact of deceit and violence on families and communities. Justice was served, yet it cannot undo the scars left behind. Remembering Kevin Pierce Sr. and Victor Ford calls us to safeguard trust, practice empathy, and uphold justice as foundations of a safer society. Violence, cloaked in seduction and betrayal, shatters more than lives. It breaks the bonds that hold communities together. Number 6. Wilma Castor. Wilma Castor's life was forever changed during Thanksgiving week of 1996 in Nebraska, when a violent act shattered a family and haunted a community for decades. At 48, Wilma had returned to live with her ex-husband, Thomas Brown Sr., a man she had divorced over 20 years earlier. Their uneasy reunion set the stage for a deadly confrontation. That holiday week, only Wilma, Thomas, and their son Edward Eddie Brown were home. According to Eddie, the evening seemed normal. They watched television, then went to bed. The next morning, Wilma and Eddie left for breakfast, leaving Thomas behind. Wilma later said Thomas made an unusual comment and left to work on his truck, never to be seen alive again. Investigators determined Thomas was murdered on November 28, 1996, shot 3 times while sleeping on his living room sofa. Wilma admitted to shooting him twice, aiming for his head, saying, "That makes me a bad shot. I was aiming for his head." His body was concealed in the basement before being dumped in a ditch near Kearney, Nebraska, discovered days later. The scene was disturbing, his shirt pulled up, jeans lowered, and body partially entangled in barbed wire, evidence of a brutal and calculated act. The prosecution argued Wilma's motive was financial. Thomas had cut her off from his money, and she stood to benefit from an $18,000 life insurance policy naming her as beneficiary. Wilma was also charged with forging checks and unauthorized use of Thomas's financial cards, reinforcing suspicions of greed. Yet in a 2009 interview, Wilma denied greed was her motive, claiming she was protecting her children. She said, "I was fed up with the way he was treating my 2 boys, accusing Thomas of favoring his stepchildren over their biological sons and refusing to help when one son was in jail and needed support." Wilma and Eddie were arrested soon after Thomas's body was found. While awaiting trial, Wilma reportedly told a cellmate about the insurance policy, intensifying the case against her. In 1997, Wilma was convicted of first-degree murder, forgery, and other charges and sentenced to life in prison. However, her conviction was overturned on appeal due to the state's failure to disclose critical information, leading to a retrial in 2000 where she was reconvicted on all counts. Wilma's demeanor in court was described as calm but resigned. She began serving her life sentence on April 26, 2000, remaining incarcerated until her death in 2024. Her son Edward received a lighter sentence for his accessory role and was released in 1999. The case deeply affected the community. Thomas Brown Jr., who inherited the family home after his father's death and release from prison, embodied a family torn apart by violence. The brutality of the murder and the calculated efforts to hide the crime underscored the dark consequences of unresolved family disputes. This tragic story offers crucial lessons. First, long-standing family conflicts, especially involving finances and favoritism, can spiral into devastating violence if not addressed early. Second, attempting to conceal crimes only deepens pain and delays justice. Third, transparency and diligence from law enforcement and the courts are essential to preserving justice and community trust. Wilma Castor died on December 2, 2024, at age 76, leaving behind a legacy stained by murder and betrayal. Her story compels reflection on the fragility of familial bonds and the cost of vengeance. Thomas Brown Sr.'s violent death reminds us that trust can be fragile and that communication and empathy are vital to preventing tragedy. Justice may be served, but the scars left behind linger in families and communities alike. Violence destroys more than lives, it fractures the foundations that hold us together. As we close this unsettling chapter on Nebraska's most notorious women killers, the chilling truths of Carrie Jones, Bailey Boswell, Shelley Casterline, Monique C, Taiana Matheny, and Wilma Castor linger long after the headlines fade. These cases reveal how manipulation, betrayal, and cold-blooded violence can shatter lives and communities alike. If you want to stay ahead of the darkest tales and the pursuit of justice, make sure to subscribe to Justice Reversed and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on our upcoming videos that dive deep into the most shocking crimes across the United States. Stay alert, stay informed, and remember, true crime isn't just a story, it's a warning. Join us on this journey as we uncover the truth behind the shadows.